గ్రామీణ భారతం కుప్పకూలిపోతుంది. వ్యవసాయం కుదేలైపోతుంది. రైతు సంక్షేమమే ధ్యేయంగా ముఖ్యమంత్రి కేసీఆర్ జాతీయ రాజకీయాల్లోకి వస్తున్నారు. ఇదే నేపథ్యంలో ప్రస్తుతం మనం JNUలో ఉన్నాం. ప్రొఫెసర్ సుధీర్ సుతారి మనతో పాటుగా ఉన్నారు. ఆయన అడిగి రైతులకు సంబంధించిన మరింత సమాచారాన్ని సేకరిద్దాం. సార్ నమస్తే. హౌ వుడ్ యూ సీ రూరల్ ఇండియా, ఎస్పెషల్లీ వెన్ అగ్రేరియన్ సెక్టర్ we consider?
Rural India is changing very rapidly. We must understand this. It's no more the traditional rural India of 1980s and 90s. It's full of aspirations, full of dreams, and it's an India which is of a new younger generation. It belongs to the youth. So I think when we talk about rural, we need to rethink the way we used to think about it traditionally. I was talking to somebody a few days ago, and somebody said that now when one sees a farmer wearing a jeans and t-shirt, the first question is whether he is a farmer because the person is wearing a jeans. I think we need to change that perspective. It's no more that same rural India which was there in 1960s and 70s. It's an India which is demanding its share in development. It is demanding development. It is demanding better roads. So I think rural India is an aspirational new India. That's how I look at it.
I saw your observations. In your observations, you mentioned about the rural politics. What exactly the definition of the rural politics?
When I say rural politics, basically it means the way different political parties and groups have taken up the whole idea of rural. And I must mention here that when we talk about Gandhi or Nehru, when they took up rural, they talked about rural in integration with agriculture. Now what we see afterwards is that rural is separated from agriculture. Now the focus became only agriculture, and that too on production, assuming that it will resolve the problems of the rural. So when I am saying rural politics, it is basically about how different political parties look at the idea of rural as a society, as a community, not only agriculture. We need to bring both together and then look at it. So rural politics is about this aspect, where it's not only about economy, it's not only about production, it's about people, their life, their betterment.
Sir, we are talking about the transformation of rural India, where even farmers are also wearing jeans, and he's holding mobile phones, and a little bit advancement is there. But whereas when we look at a glance at country level, after achievement of 75 years of independence, central governments have failed to utilize the natural resources available across the country. What is the reason behind it, and how do you see it?
I think when you talk about natural resources, I would say there has not really been a judicious utilization of the natural resources. In some areas there was over exploitation of natural resources. Take for example Punjab is one region, and there are areas where agriculture was left completely up to the nature. So you can look at, for example, Eastern India about natural resources. But I would also say that whatever natural resources were available, I think we were not able to come up with a developmental plan that would develop the area based upon those natural resources. And for example, when we talk about agriculture, the emerging cropping pattern, for example in dry areas of Punjab, when people started growing rice or other crops which demand lot of water, irrigation facilities, that resulted into major problems. Whereas areas where actually some of these crops could have been grown, they started shifting to other different kinds of crops. So I think cropping pattern is one of the area where our planning has failed miserably. We need to think about diversifying our cropping pattern, keeping in mind the natural resources which are available with us the way they are available with us.
Sir, throughout the country, peasant class is suffering a lot. Suicides are becoming very common phenomena. How do you see the suicides across the country? What is the reason behind, according to you, and what factors are influencing the rights to go for suicides?
Yeah, that's a very good question you raised. the first point with which I started, I think when we talk about farmer suicides, we also need to remember that basically the distress situations which lead to suicide, they occur when there is a mismatch between the aspirations and what we are able to achieve. Now the fact is that rural India is becoming aspirational. I think we need to stop thinking in terms of providing minimum to rural India, a minimum guarantee scheme, a minimum health care, minimum education. I think that's not what rural India needs. We need to think of providing maximum quality life in rural India, so that people feel that the government is actually bothered about them, their aspirations, their dreams. It's not always about giving them bare minimum and then thinking that okay, our responsibility is done. So suicides can only be taken care of if there is an assurance from politics that state is willing to provide the best quality life in the remotest villages of India. It is not that the best quality health services, best education, best roads will be available only in metropolitan or some cities. Even the rural India needs to trust that the government is seriously looking after the rural India. If you look at the recent farmers protest which you talked about, you will see the same gap between aspirations and the way government looks at the rural was highlighted in the protests time and again. The people are demanding that rural demands its complete share. It's not about providing minimalistic facilities and thinking that okay, we have done our due.
Sir, how do you see the BJP-led NDA stand on farmers, and recent instances you have known better, because farmers have protested in a huge manner opposing the NDA's policy. They alleged that BJP government is clearly doing against to the welfare of the farmers. How do you see all these things, making laws and repealing them back and all these things?
The present government on one point where I think they took a wrong track, which is that rural development is something which cannot be left up to the market to taken care of. And when I'm saying rural development, I mean rural and agricultural development together. It is the state which has to proactively invest and get involved in rural development. Now initially when the government came into power, and this can be said also about the previous BJP government when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, when a lot of investment in rural infrastructure was started by the state, I think that position gradually shifted, and now it was started being assumed that once the market comes into picture, the rural development or agricultural development will be taken care of. I think that is a wrong perception. Rural development and agricultural development nowhere in the world has been left to the market. It is the state which invests into it. Market gradually emerges out of it. Now the protest which farmer had carried out were basically about this. When government gave that impression that it is willing to give it to the market to look after interests of the farmer.
Farmers are also demanding the statutory protection for MSP, minimum support price.
Yes.
So what is your opinion on MSP? What should be done by the central government?
I think when you say MSP, we need to understand that MSP is not only the price, it's a package. I would say it is a minimum support package. It's not minimum support price. And the package involves, number one, the guarantee of buying the product from the farmer, number two, preserving that product, and number three, ensuring the supply chain of the product. So for example, in case of Telangana also, when government provided so much of financial support to the farmers, and there was I think Telangana for the last 3 years has been it has done the highest procurement of rice crop, because it ensured the minimum support price. But then the government was in the dilemma what to do with that crop. I think when we talk about minimum support package, we need to think of a complete strong supply chain. Where the government has been I think lagging behind is that it picks up dots from that supply chain somewhere in between and then tries to connect those dots. I don't think it is going to work like that. So procuring from the farmer, supplying it in the market, and then thinking of export linked growth. We need to think these three in an integrative manner. The problem is that now when the warehouses are there, then the policy is different, there is no coordination. When the procurement is there, there is no coordination. And when it goes to supply chain, I mean the exports, it's a different domain altogether. So the convergence, the linkage is missing, and that is where the government is unable to handle the whole issue of MSP. So I think it needs to be seen as a package, and the government has to have a more holistic, broader picture on this entire issue of MSP.
So during the period of the laws, agricultural laws adopted by the NDA government, there was a huge criticism on the intervention of dalals, brokers. The policies have adopted by the union government are very much pro dalal oriented. Kind of allegations have erupted across the country. How do you see the dalal concept of
No, I think the government's justification was the opposite. Government said that it wanted to do away with intermediaries, and the farmers were actually protesting when they said that when you are saying you are going to do away with intermediaries, number one, those intermediaries are our first support base when there is an emergency. So if you need if there is a health emergency at home and you need money to go to a private hospital, then it is only your money lender which provides you the support. Secondly, if you do away with those money lenders, what is the support you are replacing it with? You are bringing it with the corporate led banks and the financial institutions, which are going to be far more dangerous, because the local money lenders are local. They are embedded in local structures, family networks and so on. Everybody knows that they are not going to run away anywhere, number one. Number two, they also feel pressurized. There is a moral pressure. They go to farmers' weddings, they go to death ceremonies, they go to birth ceremonies. Bank managers do not go any of these places. So if you bring in bank managers and think that they will provide that moral support and the assurance, I think there is a problem with that. That's what farmers were protesting. Now what we need to do instead, we need to have a better regulatory mechanism for the traditional money lenders. I think doing away with them is neither possible nor it is going to solve the problem. For that we need a better, efficient system.
So to pull out from the same problems which are now we are talking about, the government of Telangana has adopted a unique policy when compared with other states or union government, that Raitu Bandhu scheme has been undertaken by the government of Telangana, where farmers are getting 10,000 rupees per acre per annum. Do you feel that is this the alternative mechanism to support the farmers to avoid borrowings and lendings?
The central government, after Telangana implemented this policy, central government also picked it up, and they also started the similar scheme. So I think it is a welcome move because it provides some kind of support. And along with this, Telangana government has also initiated many other schemes to provide support to the farmers and give some assurance. Is to invest more and more in rural development. I would say, if you ask me, that the state governments or the central government need to have at least 30% budget allocation straight away going to the rural development, number one. Number two, when I am saying rural development, I am also saying that there should be a proper auditing. For example, there is a component called gender budgeting. Similarly, there should be a rural budgeting, which looks at how much money has gone specifically to the rural areas. Now what happens if you look at the budget for rural development, a major chunk goes to MG Narega. Now MG Narega provides a guarantee of employment, but it provides, as I said, it provides the minimum guarantee. Again, we are looking at it from a minimum perspective. I think minimum, the rural has given a clear message, minimum is not enough. We don't want minimum, we want maximum, we want a better life. We in the rural also, we want the government to say that our rural should also be, it's not only smart city mission, it should be smart village mission also, where the government invests in rural, and a rural should look like any other better place. instead of giving a bare minimum road.
Sir, when we talk about MG Narega, the government of Telangana has undertaken an innovative initiative that these funds, whichever are coming from the union government, are utilizing in agriculture field by the government of Telangana. How do you react on
Yeah,
such initiative?
that's a good initiative. In fact, government of Telangana also started utilizing MG Narega fund for building rural infrastructure, which is a welcome move, because in most of the states MG Narega fund has been used for activities in the name of agriculture which do not really contribute to the development of rural areas. So if it is being used for development of school building, hospital building, panchayat building and so on, I think that is the real utilization, and which is a welcome move.
Sir, KCR is coming with pro-farmer oriented policies into the national political scenario. So, what do you suggest to a new political platform coming with pro-agriculture policies? What kind of measures to be taken into consideration to uplift primary sector people, peasants and all?
There are 3 points which I would like to mention. First, I think there has to be a maximum investment in rural India, which has to be highlighted, that this is how we are going to invest in rural in maximum possible manner, not in minimum possible manner. That's point number 1. The second point is, I think we need to seriously talk about cropping pattern, and there is a need to have an alternative cropping pattern which need to be put in place, keeping in mind the local requirements. That's where the investment is needed. And third, which is the most crucial point, is that what we are facing a problem with is the convergence of different policies. So what you have is, there are 30, 40, 50 policies for rural development, but they work in a segregated manner. They don't speak to each other. What we need is a convergence platform in every rural area, number 1. And within convergence platform, the problem is now the convergence is bureaucracy oriented convergence. Till the time a bureaucrat who is interested in this, there is a convergence. The moment that bureaucrat is transferred, the convergence collapses. I think there is a need to have a convergence mechanism which involves different actors in the rural areas. So when any political party is thinking of devising a new plan for rural India, I think it has to promise maximum and not minimum. That's how I think look at it.
KCR is also suggesting Telangana farmers to go for alternate cropping patterns also. So, do you feel that the very model of Telangana is required at national level when compared to the agriculture field, or when compared to other issues also?
Yes, certainly. The cropping pattern related debate, in fact, it was started from Telangana, and Telangana has been talking about it. But the real challenge is how to encourage farmers to adopt those alternative cropping patterns. And I think that's where Telangana and other states also need to think about it, because there are many local crops, especially millets, which have been very productive but which have been gradually done away because there is no proper government support for it. Despite millets having a very good market, because of the lack of incentive by the government, lack of institutional facilities, it has not really taken off. In fact, our traditional food habit was actually around the millets, or coarse grains, cereal grains and so on. So it was a mixed plate which we had. Now it is only either rice or wheat. So that diversification, which was actually part of our food habit, I think need to be put into practice. We need a new food system approach which actually guides our agricultural pattern. So in fact, we should grow what is healthy for people to eat instead of the reverse, where people eat what farmers are growing because of the market requirement. So we need to actually reverse the cycle. And I was there in Telangana and there was a brief discussion about it, and that was actually a welcome step. And I think if the government starts developing more on it and starts consultations, especially Telangana has also been talking about encouraging exports of different crops. But now the problem is that how to integrate the export supply chain with the local supply chain. I think that is where more consultations are also required. the steps taken are really welcome step, because this is what every state in India needs to do. That kind of aggressive investment in agriculture is required, but the question is how to sustain it, how to carry it forward. That's where I think there needs to be more dialogue and discussion.
ఇది సుధీర్ సుతార్ గారు మనతో పాటుగా పంచుకుంటున్న సమాచారం. మొత్తం మీద చూసుకుంటే కనుక రైతులు బాగుపడాలంటే కేంద్ర ప్రభుత్వంలో బడ్జెట్లో 30% నిధులు కేటాయించాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందని చెప్పేసి వారు భావిస్తున్న పరిస్థితి కనిపిస్తుంది. అలాగే గ్రామీణ భారతం ఇంకా అభివృద్ధి చెందాలంటే గ్రామీణ స్థాయిలో ఇంకా ఎక్కువ మొత్తంలో నిధులు ఖర్చు చేయాల్సిన అవసరం ఉందని చెప్పేసి కూడా ఆయన భావిస్తున్నారు. ఇక తెలంగాణ ప్రభుత్వం అమలు చేస్తున్న రైతు సంక్షేమ విధానాలను ఆయన పూర్తిగా కొనియాడుతున్న పరిస్థితి కనిపిస్తోంది. కెమెరామెన్ లింగారెడ్డి శ్యామ్లతో సూరజ్ కుమార్, JNU, న్యూఢిల్లీ.